The news broke on a quiet Tuesday morning. The kind of morning where the world seems to move a little slower, and most people are just starting their day, unaware that something unusual is about to unfold. But the reaction was anything but quiet. Newsrooms buzzed with urgency, televisions blared breaking news alerts, and people everywhere stopped to watch, sensing that this was more than just another headline. Former President Donald Trump was reportedly furious. The cause? Potatoes. Not oil, not steel, but the humble potato had set off a political firestorm. Canada, a country Trump often targeted during his presidency, announced a significant and unexpected cut in potato exports to the United States, sending shockwaves through the agricultural industry. For Trump, this was a direct challenge to his America First trade philosophy, a core part of his political identity and campaign promises. He saw it as a slap in the face, a sign that other countries were no longer afraid to stand up to the US, and perhaps even a warning shot in a larger global power struggle. Reports described him making heated phone calls, demanding answers from advisors, trade officials, and anyone who would listen, determined to get to the bottom of the potato crisis. The humble potato had become a symbol of a much larger trade battle, representing not just food, but national pride and economic security. Trump took to social media, calling the Canadian government weak and deceitful, accusing them of deliberately hurting American farmers and threatening the livelihoods of hardworking families. He framed the issue simply: Canada was being unfair to America, and he would not stand for it. The message was clear and easy to rally behind. The timing, July 27, 2025, only added to the drama, coming at a moment when political tensions were already running high. Trump's reaction was calculated to grab headlines and pressure the current administration, forcing them to respond to the growing public outcry. By focusing on potatoes, he made a complex trade issue accessible to everyone, turning it into a kitchen table conversation across America. The message: under his leadership, America's food supply would have been secure, and no foreign government would have dared to threaten it. Now, he argued, the country was vulnerable due to weak leadership, and ordinary Americans were paying the price at the grocery store. The Great Potato Conflict had officially begun, with both sides digging in for what promised to be a long and bitter standoff. The story was no longer about potatoes, it was about power, pride, and political legacy, with each side determined not to back down. The stage was set for a new kind of trade war, one where even the smallest crop could tip the balance of international relations. Canada's decision to cut potato exports didn't happen overnight. It was years in the making, shaped by a complex web of economic, political, and environmental factors. For years, Canadian farmers, especially those in Prince Edward Island and New Brunswick, faced tough U.S. trade barriers, stringent inspections, unpredictable tariffs, and even accusations of dumping cheap potatoes into the American market. Frustration grew as their concerns were repeatedly ignored by both American officials and, at times, their own government. Many farmers felt powerless, watching their livelihoods hang in the balance. The main reason for the export cut was twofold: food security and market diversification. Canadian leaders wanted to ensure a stable food supply for their own citizens and reduce reliance on a single export market. Relying so heavily on the U.S. was risky. Any sudden policy shift or border closure could devastate Canadian farmers and leave warehouses full of unsold potatoes. The government's goal was to build a more resilient agricultural sector, one that could withstand shocks and was less dependent on a single trading partner. Environmental sustainability was also a key concern. Massive U.S. demand put enormous pressure on Canadian land and water resources, threatening long-term agricultural health. By reducing exports, Canada promoted sustainable farming, encouraged crop rotation, and protected the environment for future generations. National pride played a role too. Many Canadians were tired of being seen as the junior partner in North American trade, always following America's lead. The move asserted Canadian sovereignty and sent a clear message: Canada would act in its own interest, not just in response to U.S. demands. The decision was widely popular at home, seen as a bold and independent step that put Canadian farmers and values first. Ultimately, it was about more than just potatoes. It was about respect, self-reliance, and charting a new course for the nation's future. Canada was ready to forge its own path, even if it meant some friction with its biggest trading partner. The world took notice of this bold move. The potato export cut became a turning point in North American trade, signaling a shift in the balance of power and priorities. Canada was no longer just following America's lead, it was setting its own agenda with confidence and purpose. As the potato conflict escalated, tensions ran high across the country. Farmers worried about their livelihoods, and headlines warned of economic fallout. The nation's agricultural heartland was at a crossroads, with uncertainty looming over every harvest. In the midst of this turmoil, a new figure emerged: Mark Carney. Carney, a world-renowned economist and former central banker, was brought in as Canada's special trade envoy. His reputation for navigating global crises made him the ideal choice for this delicate mission. His mission was clear: find new, stable markets for Canadian goods, starting with the humble potato, but with an eye on the bigger picture of national prosperity. Instead of panicking, Carney saw opportunity in crisis. He believed that adversity could spark innovation and growth. He targeted fast-growing Asian economies, recognizing their appetite for high-quality food and their potential as long-term partners for Canadian agriculture. Months of quiet, behind-the-scenes negotiations followed, building trust and laying the groundwork for a major trade agreement that could change the future of Canadian exports. Carney's approach was methodical. He wasn't just selling potatoes, but the Canadian brand itself: quality, reliability, and a commitment to sustainability that set Canada apart on the world stage. He used his global reputation and diplomatic skills to open doors that had long been closed to Canadian exporters, forging new relationships and alliances. His strategy was a masterclass in modern economic diplomacy, blending data-driven analysis with personal connection and trust building. Carney's efforts were about to pay off, promising to reshape Canada's place in the world and redefine its economic future. He proved that calm strategic leadership could turn a crisis into opportunity, inspiring confidence at home and abroad. The world watched closely as Canada prepared to pivot away from U.S. dependence, signaling a bold new direction for its trade policy. Carney's quiet revolution was underway, marked by determination and vision. A new era for Canadian trade was about to begin, with hope and opportunity on the horizon. Mark Carney's work paid off with a landmark deal: the Pacific Agricultural Partnership. Canada secured multi-billion-dollar agreements with Asian nations like Japan, South Korea, and Singapore. The deal guaranteed large, stable markets for Canadian potatoes and other agricultural products. For farmers, it meant stability and long-term contracts at fair prices. No longer at the mercy of U.S. trade policy, Canadian agriculture could invest and grow. The partnership was celebrated as a victory for economic independence and smart strategy. Beyond money, it deepened Canada's ties with Asia, including cooperation on agricultural technology and sustainability. Canada was now a leader in modern agriculture, sharing knowledge and building global relationships. The deal sent a message: middle-power countries could chart their own course. Carney's achievement became a case study in effective diplomacy. Canada found not just new markets, but new confidence. The pivot was a blueprint for resilience in a changing world. The potato crisis had sparked a billion-dollar transformation. Canada's future looked brighter than ever. The U.S.-Canada relationship, once defined by trust and cooperation, changed overnight. The potato decision marked a dramatic shift, turning partnership into rivalry. Washington saw Canada's pivot to Asia as a rebuke, fueling tension. Under Trump's criticism, the U.S. government reviewed trade agreements and hinted at retaliation. Trust eroded. Official language became formal and guarded. Businesses relying on cross-border supply chains faced uncertainty and higher costs. The border, once a symbol of friendship, now felt like a line of division. The conflict created unease for ordinary people and companies alike. The long-term consequences are still unfolding. The potato conflict revealed deep frustrations and a sense of entitlement on both sides. Rebuilding trust will take time and effort from both nations. The friendship isn't broken, but it's on ice. The path back to warmth is long and uncertain. The potato war became a cautionary tale for global alliances. The potato trade war hit home for American consumers. Grocery stores and restaurants saw higher prices and shortages of potatoes and fries. Fast food chains scrambled for new suppliers, sometimes raising prices or shrinking portions. Quality suffered. Canadian potatoes were prized for fries, and alternatives didn't always measure up. Consumers noticed the difference, sparking conversations about food origins. Many learned for the first time how dependent the U.S. was on Canadian agriculture. The humble potato became a symbol of supply chain vulnerability. The trade conflict was no longer abstract, it was on every dinner plate. The lesson: global politics can change what's on your table. The potato conflict highlighted two contrasting leaders, Mark Carney and Donald Trump. Carney's calm, strategic diplomacy secured a massive new trade deal for Canada, making him a national hero. His rise showed the power of quiet competence and long-term planning. Trump, in contrast, responded with anger and blame, framing the crisis as a failure of American strength. His confrontational style energized his base but failed to prevent Canada's pivot. The conflict became a stage for two worldviews: Carney's collaboration versus Trump's aggression. Carney's success suggested that cooperation and diversification win in today's world. Trump's frustration revealed the limits of a zero-sum approach. The potato war was more than trade, it was a lesson in leadership. Quiet diplomacy had outmaneuvered loud confrontation. The world was watching and learning. With Canada's Asian trade deal in place, the US-Canada relationship remains frosty. The US faces pressure to act tough, but a full trade war would hurt both sides. Retaliatory tariffs are possible but risky. The most likely outcome tense behind-the-scenes negotiations. Canada, emboldened, will focus on strengthening new partnerships and diversifying further. The conflict has changed Canada's foreign policy for years to come. Eventually, economic realities may force reconciliation. The potato conflict will be a lasting reminder of how fragile alliances can be. The future depends on whether both countries learn the right lessons. The Great Potato Conflict of 2025 was more than a quirky trade spat. It marked a turning point in US-Canada relations and the global economy. Canada's pivot to Asia, led by Mark Carney, became a blueprint for middle-power nations. The US learned the limits of the America First approach. The world is now more multipolar, with countries unwilling to play second fiddle. The loss of Canadian potatoes symbolized a larger shift. The story is about the end of dependency and the rise of strategic independence. The relationship is strained, but not broken. The humble potato became a catalyst for global change. Sometimes, the smallest things spark the biggest shifts.